Hey everyone, it's me, and welcome to Paleologic. And today we're talking about the Allosaurus. Allosaurus is one of the most famous theropods of all time. It's been in the public consciousness for so long that it's not even surprising that they showed up in the original Jurassic Park novel by Michael Crichton. Of course, in that book, the Allosaurus was just called the Allo, which is an apt description for this ferocious predator. But despite how iconic this dinosaur has become over the decades, there's still a lot about it that we don't know. So what can we learn about this ancient carnivore? Let's get into it. Allosaurus was first discovered in 1877 in western Colorado, and the very first specimen was actually found by the same man who had donated the fossil-rich land to the museum where it ended up, O.C. Fisher. He came across a partial skeleton, including the hip bones and a few vertebrae, and sent it to the Yale Peabody Museum of Natural History, where it was identified by paleontologist Othniel Charles Marsh. There's some dispute over whether he really was the first person to find the remains because Native Americans had found some of the fossils much earlier and were apparently trying to sell them to tourists, but their efforts were unsuccessful. Still, Marsh would go on to describe the new genus and species in 1879, naming it Allosaurus fragilis. The name Allosaurus comes from the Greek allos, meaning other, and sauros, meaning lizard. And while we usually call this animal the Allosaurus, technically speaking, Allosaurus is the name of the genus that includes a few different species. The one we're focusing on today is Allosaurus fragilis. Most of what we know about this dinosaur comes from fossils found in North America, mostly in Utah and Colorado, with a few more in Wyoming, Montana, and New Mexico. But Allosaurus also has a surprising international flair. Fossils have been found in Europe, Africa, and Asia, but those are generally from much younger individuals and may represent a separate species, Allosaurus imanis. Because fossils of Allosaurus are found all over the world, scientists estimate that this dino lived during the late Jurassic period, between 155 and 145 million years ago. That's a pretty wide range, and the estimated age is constantly changing with new discoveries. For example, the latest study on the type specimen suggests that it might have lived around 152 million years ago. There isn't a ton of information out there on the species, and it seems like the research community is having a tough time agreeing on how exactly to categorize the various Allosaurus specimens, which is probably why you've seen wildly different numbers regarding its length and weight. Some sources say it reached lengths of 30 feet or 9 meters and weighed over 2 tons, while others put its size closer to 20 feet or 6 meters long and 600 kilograms heavy. At this point, the best estimate we have is that it was around 24 feet or 7.3 meters long and weighed roughly 1.5 tons when fully grown. Like many large theropods, Allosaurus was a biped, walking on 2 legs. Its skull was long and narrow with conical teeth ideal for catching and crushing meat. The jaw was relatively weak compared to other carnivores of its time, though, so it may have used its teeth more for shearing through flesh than for delivering the death bite. Despite its size, Allosaurus was likely built more for speed than power. Its legs were long and slender, and its hands were small, which suggests that it wasn't built for sprinting after prey. Instead, it was probably a fast walker that could easily cover long distances. Paleontologists believe that Allosaurus hunted during the day and used its excellent vision to spot prey from afar. Once it got close enough, it could use its keen sense of smell to pick up the scent, then used its long neck to quickly get into position for the attack. Unfortunately, while we have a decent understanding of what Allosaurus looked like, there's still a lot that we don't know. Like I said before, most of what we know comes from juveniles, and it can be difficult to extrapolate data from young animals to adults. Additionally, the fossil record is full of gaps, and the few complete skeletons we have are missing important parts like skulls. When it comes to figuring out what this dino ate, our understanding is a little clearer. It was definitely a carnivore, but it didn't appear to be picky about what it consumed. The stomach contents of one fossil include bone fragments from at least 10 different species of dinosaurs and other reptiles. Allosaurus was especially fond of sauropods, the group that includes both Diplodocus and Brachiosaurus. These giant plant eaters were common prey for the apex predators of the late Jurassic, and it makes sense that Allosaurus would target them. Sauropods were slow, and their sheer size meant that there was a lot of meat to eat. In 1942, paleontologist J. Ceratops hypothesized that the remains of these sauropods were occasionally regurgitated by the Allosaurus and preserved nearby. This would explain why Allosaurus bones are often found so close to sauropod fossils, as well as the fact that the two groups of dinosaurs often appear together in the fossil record. However, a study published in 2018 challenged this hypothesis. The authors of the paper argued that the bones found alongside Allosaurus remains are actually tooth replacement scars, scutes, or armored plates that fell off sauropods instead. If true, this would suggest that Allosaurus didn't shy away from eating the toughest parts of its prey. In the past, Allosaurus was considered to be the apex predator of its ecosystem, sitting comfortably at the top of the food chain. But recent studies have called that into question. In 2020, researchers uncovered fossils of another theropod, the Utah raptor, in the Cleveland Lloyd Quarry in Utah. This site is famous for its wealth of Jurassic fossils, especially Allosaurus. In fact, when the quarry was first excavated in the 1940s, it yielded so many Allosaurus bones that people assumed it must have been the site of a mass battle or a gigantic breeding ground. Turns out it's likely just a mass graveyard. The team carefully analyzed the age and health of the fossils found at the site and determined that they all died at roughly the same time, suggesting that something unusual must have happened to take them all out. The cause of death remains a mystery, but the discovery of Utah raptors at the same site suggests that Allosaurus wasn't the only carnivore hunting in these parts. As for the Allosaurus itself, this discovery means that it likely had to compete for food, which could help explain why it targeted defenseless sauropods so often. So Allosaurus was probably an apex predator, but it wasn't necessarily the only one. Now, here's your obligatory shark bait. Reference: Allosaurus was famously referenced in the original Jurassic Park novel by Michael Crichton, where it's simply referred to as the Allo. In the book, it's one of several dinosaurs brought to the island theme park, and it appears in the opening sequence. Before John Hammond shows the first visitors around the park, he sends a maintenance worker named Jimmy to feed the Allosaurus. But Jimmy accidentally drops his bucket into the enclosure, and the dinosaur kills him. Hammond then decides to hold off on showing guests the Allosaurus until they can figure out a better containment solution. It doesn't work out too well, though, because later in the story, Dennis Nedry opens the Allosaurus enclosure to try to steal some embryos. The dinosaur escapes and kills him. The Allosaurus also kills one of the visitors, but it eventually runs into the T-Rex and gets murked. But that's not the only time this dinosaur has appeared in pop culture. Since the original Jurassic Park novel was published in 1990, the Allosaurus has shown up in everything from The Simpsons to Dinosaur Train. So if you grew up watching these things, chances are that you learned a lot about dinosaurs from them. And maybe that's how we should all learn about dinosaurs. Not by reading dense academic journals or watching documentaries, but by seeing them do barrel rolls on The Simpsons. Dinosaurs have captured humanity's imagination for a long time, and it looks like that won't be changing anytime soon. If you enjoyed this episode and you want to see more like it, please let us know. Leave a comment letting us know what you thought and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any future episodes. Thank you for coming along on this journey through time. I'll see you later.